I know you're gonna dig this.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are at the End Zone Club with your host, Anthony Mitchell, where we have conversations that are wrapped around things we know now, wish we knew we were younger. Hey, before we get ready to go live with today's episode, I encourage you to like, share, rate, subscribe to today's podcast. If you don't mind, in the link below there is a donate tab. Please click on the link, donate, buy merch, support, whatever you need to do, but let's go live. But first, let's hear a word from our.
Hello, everyone. This is Andre Truitt, representative for Just Gifted Clothing Brand. If you have individual talent of any kind, we are talking to you. Join this clothing brand that has built a community of people that encourages others to use their gifts and talents. Man, we are the fastest growing brand that you haven't heard of yet. To find out what we're really about, just go to justgiftedclothingbrand.com. Let me spell that out for you. JUSGIFTED clothingbrand.com. One more time for you. JUSGIFTED clothingbrand.com. Talent in any way, you're just gifted.
Shout out real quick to my guy, Dre Truitt, over there at the Just Gifted brand. You know what, Dre, today's episode is for you because one of your key catchphrases and slogans at the Just Gifted brand is that we see you. We see you. I don't know what that means to everybody listening. It could mean a lot of things, but when somebody says, hey, I see you, it has an implication that I know who you are when no one else is looking. So speaking of that, I was thinking about something. So about 6 years ago, I found myself sitting in front of a panel during a series of career-related interviews, and one of the questions that stood out from all the others, one of the interviewers asked something to the effect of, outside of work, can you put together a whole person package that shows who you are and gives credibility to your identity, right? So at first, I thought the answer would be easy. I mean, after all, I'd spent years volunteering in communities, mentoring young people, I've been hosting camps, organizing outreach events, supporting nonprofits, partnering with professional athletes, serving in ministry. So surely there would be an abundance of evidence. You know, there would be photographs, videos, posts, articles, testimonials, something that connected me to the work I had invested so much of my time into. So after I got this question, I went to work to put together my package, right? So I sit down and I begin looking. I started going through event photos for things I had been involved with. I started digging through social media pages of people that I partner with. I started even looking through old promotional material, flyers that had been posted, hashtags that people had shared from events that they had been a part of, that I also was a part of. Nothing, right? So then I even dig a little deeper and I start looking at events that I had hosted. And again, I go back through events that I supported, events that I helped myself build from ground floor up, and events where I spent countless hours behind the scenes helping others. And what shocked me was there was very little evidence that I was connected to any of it. Let me explain. In some cases, in my explanation, after looking through all of these events and social media posts and flyers and promotional events, there was no evidence that I had any part at all. So me personally, even though I knew the camps had happened, that the outreach had happened, I knew about the impact because, of course, there's been, up to this point, I've been doing this well over 10 years. There's well over hundreds of kids that we've impacted. So I have a lot of memories personally, but if someone were judging based solely by the historical record, they might never know I was at any of the events that I had put together. That realization alone bothered me, not because I wanted attention, I wasn't looking for applause, but because I began to understand a powerful truth. If you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell it for you. And sometimes within them telling your story, nobody tells it at all. let me move on. So looking through the evidence as I continued searching, another pattern began to emerge. There were pictures of my events everywhere, but most of the pictures weren't of the actual work I was building. They weren't of the volunteers serving. They weren't of the community impact. Some of them were of the children being mentored, but a lot of them even weren't. They weren't of people sacrificing their times to help others. Instead, I found people taking pictures of themselves, i.e. selfies, at a lot of my group events. Also, I saw a lot of groups posing together, taking pictures with their friends and family members at various events. I saw a lot of friends standing shoulder to shoulder, individuals documenting that they were actually at my event, but there was nothing wrong with these pictures. But me personally, I couldn't ignore what was missing. The mission, the effort, the builders, the servants, the people actually carrying the weight to make things happen. Then I noticed something even more interesting. Many of the same individuals who rarely documented our events seemed to do an excellent job documenting other people's events. At those events, the organizers were highlighted, the leaders were recognized, the work itself was captured and preserved, which led me to a difficult question. Was this really about photography, or was this about value? I realized that many leaders eventually discover something uncomfortable. People often enjoy the benefits of a vision without fully appreciating the people carrying it. Our events get celebrated. The outcomes get celebrated, especially when there's a lot of people that show up. The experience itself gets celebrated because a lot of times we put so much effort and excellence into making these things flow. But the sacrifice behind it remains invisible. That's not always intentional, but in fact, most of the times it isn't. So if you find yourself, okay, let me not even get ahead of myself because I want to go somewhere with this. But in fact, most of the time, just realize that if people aren't properly telling you your story, or showing your story, or reflecting you in their vision, sometimes it's not intentional. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But do know this, that sometimes people naturally focus on what they experience rather than what someone else endured to create that experience. So people have a tendency to show how they see themselves in your vision. But still, for me, my lesson remained that the absence of evidence didn't mean the absence of impact. One of the reasons I really want to point this out, and then I want to segue into part 3, is because as I'm scrolling a lot through social media right now, I'm seeing a lot of young people that are not getting the claps that they deserve. I'm seeing a lot of adults that have powerful vision, tremendous ideas, that have, these great goals in mind, but it doesn't feel like the people around them are celebrating them for who they really are. It's like they don't see you for you. I want to put this third portion of this podcast episode out to you. And it's this particular danger that I think young leaders need to understand, right? So for you young leaders that are listening into today's episode, know that this portion is where things become dangerous. When you realize your efforts are going unnoticed, it becomes tempting to chase recognition. So you start wanting validation, right? You start wanting people to, you start wanting acknowledgement. Sometimes we do things for love, we do it for passion, but at some point we also want respect. So you start finding yourself wanting people to tell your story. The problem, though, is that recognition is one of the weakest foundations upon which to build a purpose-driven life. Why do I say this? That's because recognition is inconsistent. Recognition is emotional. Recognition depends on other people, but purpose does not. So one of the greatest mistakes any leader can make is assuming that value and visibility are the same thing. I got to tell you, they are not. Your value is more of an internal reality, more of an internal ethical morality, whatever you want to call it, quality but visibility is based upon how well others around you see. So do know that these are not the same thing. So some of the most important, valuable people in any organization are rarely seen. Think about the coach who works and wins a Super Bowl or gets a ring. This guy has worked for hours that you never saw. The volunteer setting up chairs, the mentor making phone calls, the parents driving kids across town. Think about the organizer solving problems nobody knows exist. Visibility is public. Value is practical. Visibility gets attention. Value creates results. Sink that in for a minute. Bite that piece of steak and taste the flavor. Think about this. If you're not careful, you'll spend years trying to increase your visibility while neglecting the very thing that matters most, your value. The truth is simple, guys. People may overlook your contributions. They may forget your name. They may forget to fail to document your involvement, but they can't erase the impact of your work. Results have a way of speaking long after applaud fade. One of the takeaways I do want to take away from today's episode is I always ask visitors who come on this show, like, what's something you know now you wish you knew when you were younger? So I'm posing that question to myself, and here is my answer that I would like as a result to provide for a lot of you young leaders that are struggling with finding your value when you're not getting the right respect you should in terms of your visibility. This is a lesson I wish I had learned earlier. So looking back, I don't regret any of the work that I've put into building any platform that I've built, whether it's been a platform that has brought financial promotion into my life, my family's life, in my career, any of those things. I don't regret the work. I don't regret the service. I don't regret the countless hours invested in helping others. What I do regret, though, is assuming that someone else would preserve my story. By me assuming someone else would take pictures, by assuming someone else would document my journey, by assuming someone else would connect the dots, that assumption was wrong. So today I tell young leaders this: document your work. Sometimes you have to, and this is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow who have more of the communal mindset that this is not about me. I used to always have friends and teachers and people in my life that actually knew my value, that always used to tell me, man, you've got to become more selfish. And that just didn't sound like Christ's way of doing things. But as I sit in this interview and I'm trying to put together this package after the interview, and I'm looking around at the people next to me and people around me and going back many years from people I had been involved with, I just realized just a reoccurring trend. There's nothing wrong with selfishness from a point that you're using it to benefit the greater goal. So assuming that, like I said, people would document my journey and connect the dots, the thing I do regret is that I didn't start capturing my impact early on. I do regret that there's a lot of parts of my journey that I didn't get a chance to preserve because I was more always behind the scenes doing a lot of things for so many other people that sometimes I neglected myself, because it's not for vanity. Right? It's not for ego. It's not for self-promotion but for accountability. Sometimes, as I'm sitting at this interview and I'm telling these people all these things that I've done and I'm showing them all the work, I had no way of actually replicating or physically, visibly showing you that what I said I've done is anything beyond words. So do know this, that the strongest leaders don't spend their lives demanding recognition from others. They build such undeniable value that their recognition eventually becomes secondary. Your focus should not be on making people notice you. Your focus should be on becoming so effective, so consistent, so dependable, and so impactful that your contributions cannot be ignored. And if nobody takes the picture, guess what? You can take it yourself. If nobody tells your story, tell it yourself. If nobody preserves your legacy, preserve it yourself, because one day somebody will ask who you are. And when that day comes, you should have more than memories. You should have evidence. That's the lesson I discovered when I was missing from my own story. And perhaps that's a lesson every emerging leader needs to hear before it's too late. So now, even if you're listening to this podcast episode, in the description box, I will have a few links from some of the Canva links that I built connected to just a very, very basic magazine that I've put together that has chronicled some parts of our event, just because now I am beginning to practice more of what I'm preaching about my value not being tied in the recognition of others. However, I am setting this catalyst so that as my quality is being set, it's going to make so much more to people than hearing me do a bunch of talking. Even if you go through our website, which is also linked in the bio, you'll see we have begun to chronicle, especially more now than ever. Going back about 5 years ago, I started hiring a videographer that was able to tell my story in a different lens than what I've been doing. I can do some video editing. I can take a couple of pictures. Matter of fact, 2019, 2020, 2021, I was taking the pictures for my football camp just because there wasn't a whole lot of money coming in, didn't have the finances. So I'm trying to do the best I could, right? But once I started posting these pictures, finally, it was evident that I didn't have a very professional camera to work with. I was working with my cell phone. And I remember somebody saying, hey, listen, we got to get your photographer. Now, I did have a photographer from the church. She volunteers much of her time. However, as these camps were moving, her job scenario situation was changing. She wasn't available for everything. And then, of course, COVID happened. A lot of photographers were afraid to come out. But I would always have someone that would always kind of show up. But there were a few years where I had nobody. And, just moving forward, I'm like, hey, if I'm going to have my vision out here, if I'm going to be able to get the level of support that I want, I've got to be able to tell it how I want it. So I sat down with my first videographer, let him know these are the high points of the videos. I need to be in it a little bit now. Of course, that's because of those interviews where they're asking this. This was actually two separate occasions. One of them was at Coca-Cola, and another was, of course, was in the military. And now, just hey, I need to be in the video enough where now people can tie in my presence with this event I've hosted. However, the bigger point is I need to see a lot of videos of kids smiling, of mothers and fathers at events. I need to have it well-rounded in that we see the players. I'm not starstruck. I don't want this to be about these videos to be about football players. I want it to be about the experience. I want somebody that's never come to anything we've ever hosted to see what we've put together and to have a great idea for the spirit, for the speed of the moment, for the interactions you're going to have, not just with the players, but from the family involved. And do realize that when I'm telling you, our platforms are about families and people of all colors, cultures, creed, you'll see it more than you hear me say it. So I started seeing our vision beginning to take off more when I was able to show my story in high quality. When the pictures were in high quality, now I've got high enough quality where if media doesn't even come, I can send them these pictures that have been taken by a professional photographer and videographer. And then I start noticing now, even though they didn't show up, but our content is on the evening news. It's in the local newspapers. It's in the magazines. These are my pictures. Now I'm able to dictate the flow of where we're being seen and heard, if that makes sense. So learn to play this portion of the game. Don't expect other people to sometimes see who you are, but make sure your quality content is out in a way that people can recognize it. So, hey, I know I forgot to tell you guys this at the beginning of today's episode, but if you don't mind just donating a little bit today to today's episode and podcast, if you found any quality from anything that I've said, if this has encouraged you in any sense of the word, please like, share, rate, subscribe, share this with a friend. Stop, click on the links that I have. Look at our biographies, look at our magazines, look at our podcast insiders. And I appreciate you guys for all you do. So until next time, this is Anthony Mitchell. Be blessed.